Welcome everybody tonight to this special call board meeting for the Rockcastle County Board of Education. We have plenty of visitors here tonight, and it's always good to see everyone. The first thing is to call to order our meeting, and we always start out with a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Let our roll call note that all board members are present tonight. Item 1C is the reading of board team commitments. You have a copy of those. I'm not going to read those tonight. We just did that a couple weeks ago. Item 2 on the agenda is adopt the agenda. Does anyone have any questions about anything? If not, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Move to approve.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
And okay, and item 3 is our discussion piece. It's to discuss the BG1 line item cost for Rockcastle County Middle School projects. Who would like to go first?
We'll let Travis, if you don't care to kick us off, and then we'll let Keith and Anthony join us.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. I'm gonna take just a second and hand this out, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'll do a little
Thank
talking as
you.
I'm handing that out. Last board meeting, I was asked to be able to kind of provide some updates. We've got yours on some construction costs.
Thank you.
So I prepared a little cost analysis for you. We'll take a minute and talk about it. You got that? So at the last meeting, the BG1 was presented to you, and I was asked to kind of give you an explanation of some of the reason that BG1 was a little more costly than the original initial BG1 that was generated back in January 2022. So I've taken in the first column the preliminary BG1 of January 22, gave you all the items listed on that BG1. The second column over, which is current BG1, is the current cost estimate. And then the third column is the delta between the two. So the delta between the two is $8,735,346. So why is there a delta? So the reason there's a delta is for an additional scope that was added to the project after the initial BG1 was generated. So that additional scope consisted of the geothermal well field, which is additional $685,000. And then we were asked to add the cost to redo your football field, grandstands, et cetera. So the cost of your football field is $7,315,776. So on top of those are soft costs, which deals with fees, bond sales, utilities, surveys, et cetera, which cost an additional $734,570, which equals the delta between the original preliminary BG1 back in January 2022 compared to the current BG1.
So the first presentation that you gave us, it did not have any of the football field costs. None of that was presented to us at that time.
No.
So $7 million of this additional cost is for that add-on itself.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that include the field itself or just the stands?
The whole.
So are we still doing turf field?
Yes, turf and redoing the track and then the grandstands and the bleachers. So that encompasses the entire
Yes.
project.
But now it is minus the other gymnasium.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. We're gonna do that as an alternate and keep our fingers crossed to see if the bids come in favor of being able to do the auxiliary gym.
I guess, I don't know very much about building things, obviously, or I wouldn't ask these questions to you. But $7 million to redo our football, is that,
Yes, ma'am.
that's
So
a normal price? I have to ask that because it
Sure.
seems like a astronomical fee to me
Yeah.
for that.
Well, fair question. It's not only your football field, okay? So it's the grandstands, it's redoing your track. There's utilities has to be relocated, it's under the field. It's redoing your light poles, and it's we're having to in order to meet ADA handicap accessibility, we're having to install sidewalks up from your existing parking lot around over to your visitor side grandstands. There's some huge retaining walls that's got to go in. So if you were asking me, you know, what would the cost of the field be? Just a rough estimate to redo your field would be about 1.8 million to $2 million of that cost. So your grandstands, your grandstands was probably about $1.5 million to $2 million of that. Your light poles, redoing those, you're probably looking at about $700,000 to redo those poles. So it's a whole hodgepodge of items that creates that.
So are we putting in totally new poles?
That is the plan, if I'm not mistaken.
Cause I thought we had talked about our poles not long ago that,
But when we had Derek, I know you're back there, but if you wanna speak to that, but the engineers looked at that and determined they had to be replaced.
Yeah, we had planned on just,
We tried to save money by
Relamping
not
those.
doing that.
but according to the structural engineer and electrical engineer, they've exceeded their lifespan.
That company actually went out of business, so there's no way to determine if.
I thought we had just talked about them before and
We did, we tried every way that we could to preserve those poles.
Okay.
But
Yep.
if that company was not defunct, we might have been able to do it, but that was kind of the death of that.
And the turf field is gonna cost itself how much?
It's gonna be about 1.8 million.
We-
So you gotta go in, you gotta dig down approximately 18 inches, take all that soil out. Under that field, there's some existing utilities that has to be relocated. The other thing that you have to do, you have to put all the way around that track, you have to put a curb, concrete curb that has to go all the way around that track in order to allow your turf to come over and create a separation between your track and your field. And that the synthetic turf comes over and laps over top of that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, and the auditorium would run how much?
2.5, wasn't it?
Two.
Yeah, the auxiliary gym,
Auxiliary gym is
we've
two,
estimated about 2 million for that.
which we do expect to be, or planning on getting a rebate from doing the geothermal that then we could then use to pay for the gym. That's the science behind the geothermal, that it does have that rebate option.
Do we expect some utility costs on the lighting, or will it be minuscule? I mean, I assume when we change over the lighting, it's gonna be more efficient than what we've got, but is it?
It will, but we actually did a study on those lights, when we did our energy project, and we only spent about $5,000 a year. It amazed me too,
So,
because those are high wattage lights, but yeah, we'll save probably maybe half that with LEDs.
And in mind too, the turf field can be utilized for more than football,
Yes, soccer
Correct.
as well.
Yeah.
So we built
Yeah,
that in
I feel
for
like
it to be
it's-
lined,
not just football only.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
so it could be used for soccer.
Yes.
I guess I hate to sound like Debbie Downer. I mean, I'm not trying to be that person. I really am. I guess the first presentation of the building itself, could you please remind me the difference? You said the grandstands, about what was presented at first to now, the big difference for that extra cost. I mean, just remind me because of what it looked like, if you don't.
Derek might be able to
Yeah.
talk to that.
Well, we always showed the camera down there, that was like
Yes.
the money shot ending slide. But it was, at that time, the intention was that was your old field.
Right.
Maybe in a separate pot of money, you would paint it or something, but we were just kind of looking back up. Now, the grandstand was just kind of a design reaction to the topography, and we started easing that in, but that was after the finances were in place. So we had the BG1 before we ever drew. And it was based on square footage and, taking the KDE allotments of, hey, here's how big your building should be, before we ever drew it. So then once we started drawing it, we started noticing, hey, it makes a lot of sense to react to this topography, and we could kind of bridge the gap between new and old by fixing your grandstands. It was never remediated back to the original number.
Okay.
So we were trying to be good, like, we weren't trying to pull any stunts, but.
No, I don't think that you would do that.
I guess that leaves me with a question. So we're talking about square footage and what we send up and the number of students and to get to the calculation.
Yes.
So with what we're talking about here, that's not including putting on the auditorium. So does that affect the square footage and what we've sent?
No, it includes that, it includes the auditorium. What KDE has includes that square footage on the auditorium. It's just the additional cost, we would need to phase that part in. But the square footage wise, we're perfectly fine and within the scale.
That's something that amazes me. KDE is gonna say you can only spend this many dollars for square footage for a classroom for learning, but hey, we'll let you spend 7 or 8 million to put in a football. You understand what I'm saying? It's not, it does not seem as regulated for cost, I guess.
So House Bill 678 allowed districts, and we adopted the usage of following House Bill 678, which allowed districts to use and bond out to include extracurriculars within their scope of their projects.
It'll also
So that's a
include-
change.
I know, but I'm just saying, what I'm saying is they, we would love to have a look, maybe build in case we were to grow in population, but they are so adamant
Stringent
about their,
on that.
stringent with that dollar amount that they're, so, I don't know.
I have an unrelated question. I think it's an okay time for that. So my question is about the turf. I'm not sure that I've heard this conversation. My boys are football fans, so I hear like the grass versus turf. I was just curious, like the cost of that and like, is everybody supportive of turf versus? Is that a bad question?
Do you wanna talk about the difference in cost, Travis, or is that even something that you would know off?
Or is that just kind of unanimous that everybody wants, like, I know grounds would be, if you don't do turf,
Well,
then there's grounds in there too.
The beauty of the turf is the multi-use aspect of it, and the fact that you can practice on it. Like now, we have maintained that grass field for games. It's only, they practice on one end of it for just a little while and it'd be worn out. Looks horrible.
What's the maintenance? Do you know the maintenance costs on that each year, by any chance? And we can't utilize our track, correct, at all?
Not at all.
They have to
completely-
paint that field like.
Yeah, I was just
wherever
curious. I know it ain't
it's-
$1 million, but I was just curious how much.
I'd say we spend $25,000 to $30,000 a year at least.
Just on the field.
Just ballpark figure.
What's the,
Turf's prettier.
so 3 questions about turf. Question 1, what is the maintenance cost on turf? It's pretty low, but it's got a 10-year lifespan or something, is that?
It depends on what kind of turf you get, but, the maintenance of the turf is basically cleaning it and the infield. And we've talked, Miss Carrie and I have both talked to some people about infield being important. Some people put a pad under it that's $300,000 extra dollars, and I think we talked about bidding that as a deductible alternate. But other people have told us that they've done studies and that said the rubber infield is more important than the pad, so.
So you asked the question about the warranty. The warranties are different. Typically, you get an 8, 12, or 15. It just depends on how your engineer designs it that way. As far as the maintenance it's typically, as Mr. Clark said there, you just maintain the rubber fill. You have to have a gator or something to pull the little brushing system behind you. And you touched on the what we call a shock pad that goes under the field. We are, several counties around you are switching from natural turf to synthetic turf fields.
Could you explain the difference?
It's just
Oh,
grass
okay,
versus,
okay,
natural
okay.
grass. Just natural grass versus the synthetic. Some of them go with the, what they call the shock pad underneath them. I know in northern Kentucky, we've done a few fields up there. They're not doing them up there, but most of eastern Kentucky, they are using the shock pads. So we're gonna bid that as an alternate, and we'll provide you the information you need to make a educated decision on whether or not you wanna go with a shock pad or not.
I think it's important to note that we've surveyed, you know, our high school students, and there is a desire for other athletic activities that can be provided by doing this, that, you know, soccer
If
and.
there's
that-
turf and it can be
Yes.
more versatile.
And we can't forget that the band aspect, you know, the band
Sure.
can practice there more, and, you know, it's.
Track's to me the big one too. We have a great track team. And they
that-
don't even
That builds
get
a place for all your field events too, not only just the track that we don't really have now, that's subpar for sure.
And does turf make any difference at all on graduation? Is it better, is it worse, is it the same?
As far as using the field? What you mean?
Yeah,
Being a better-
okay, I mean, that's kind of become a thing that's pretty important to us, all of a
Yes,
sudden that,
yes.
So will the football team practice on that field now, or they maintain practice at the high school like
They'll
they
have
do?
the option to do either
To
one.
do either one?
Yeah, that field will have a drain system underneath it, and it will drain, as quickly as the rain hits it, for the most part.
is there any difference in student safety between a turf field and a grass field?
Depends on who you ask.
That's what I've found out, but,
Missed a
you're
lot
the
of
first
districts
person
around
that's,
us.
that said
Haven't-
nobody knows, everybody else has an
Honest,
opinion.
what's pretty.
Lasky, both, there's no turf.
Yeah.
I think both the Laurels now have turf.
I mean, I think
Each
as we're
school will have
evolving,
one of those.
yeah, it's kind of the, it's
Matter.
expensive, but it's the new direction everybody's going in, high school wise.
Clay County,
And if,
they're all,
my thought is if we're doing it, it's the time to do it and not wait 2 years and then have to dig everything back up or try.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm looking at those dollar signs. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I mean.
I'm just asking yay versus nay, you know, the total breakdown.
Trent, I guess I would ask you, were you surprised, have you been surprised about the cost of what this project is gonna cost? I mean, were you kinda expecting this, cause you are our facilities guy? You're my go-to person, so.
I think that in the environment that we're in, post-COVID, it just is what it is. I mean,
I guess another couple of questions, I was looking at what are the special inspections that's doubled in cost?
okay, so special inspections, the HBC Housing Building Construction requires a independent special inspector that's independent of the construction manager, architect, contractors, everybody, to perform special inspections. He has to come out, he check when there's a footer that's dug, he has to come out and check the soil compaction. He has to inspect the rebar that's installed, make sure the spacing's correct, it's tied correct. He does concrete testing, he tests welds, he does all kinds of other testing on the project. Independent of us, it's kind of like so the fox not watching the hen house. Yeah. And at the end of the project, he has to provide a certified letter that your project has met all the special inspection requirements, and has to stamp that as an engineer. And we have to have that letter in order to get you a certificate to occupy your building.
Down here at the bottom, we have, from the original to the BG1, there's a cost for advertising and builder's risk.
So advertising, if you have to pay for your cost of advertising in a local newspaper, et cetera, like that, that's what that is. Because you will run your advertisement in a local newspaper. Sometimes they will charge you, sometimes they won't charge you for that. So we have to put some money in for that. Builder's risk during construction, as the owner, you are responsible for carrying the builder's risk policy on the project.
So it's insurance.
Yes, ma'am.
Those numbers, is there something that dictates how much those are as far as like the inspections and stuff? Or I know like architect fees is determined by whatever the KDE sets, you know, based on the project and all. Are those numbers determined also that way, or is it just?
No, they're based, so those are based on current projects that we have done that's similar to your
Similar,
project.
okay.
So what will end up happening is, once we bid the project out and build the schedule, et cetera, your architect and I will work together, and we will issue what we call formal proposals to multiple firms in order for them, give them a scope of work. That way we can have a competitive form of proposal to present to you and say, these are the proposals and the pricing we received for those. So we have to put something in to cover that cost.
Do you care to explain once more the geothermal? The number you had said was what, 700 and some thousand?
685,000.
Okay, 685. Ms. Carey had said something that we're hoping by putting that in, we'll get some type of rebate.
Yes, so, the federal government has offered rebates on the geothermal, and, I don't know exactly do you know what that percentage, it's
40.
So it's 40%, so the other day when we were talking, I think we were around 2.2, 2.4, somewhere, that is a potential rebate, and your, mechanical engineer, which is a consultant of Derek's, they specialize in pursuing those rebates, and they feel very, very confident. They got a team of lawyers, team of tax experts, and they feel very confident that is a reality that you will receive that rebate.
So the rebate will be larger than what we actually have to pay for the system itself?
Yes,
Yes.
That's on the building.
yes.
Goes on the building cost.
Will that be an after project or a during?
That will
A
be,
year after
that'll be
project
after your,
completion.
if I'm not mistaken, the project will be.
Takes 1 year post-project to get the.
Yes, the
get
rebate
check
is
back.
returned
We'll just
1
get a
year
check.
post-project, and they'll just, a direct check.
And I don't wanna pigeonhole you on this, cause I know there's a lot of factors, but the timeline for this construction is roughly,
So we anticipate the construction phase being about a 30-month process, okay? It's a very tight site. We've got some renovation in the existing building that we're gonna have to phase and just complete phases, move people in and move people out. So what will happen is, I will build a detailed construction schedule, and I will do a logistics plan. And I'll consult with Dr. Ballinger and Trent and your principal, and lay all that out, prior to the bid, so the contractors will know, and we'll coordinate. And then my on-site personnel, once we get on site and get going, he will build that relationship with Mr. Clark and, your principal. Now, the first month or two, it's gonna be a little bumpy, because we're gonna disrupt the traffic flow, and we're gonna have to deal with the logistics of that, because we're gonna be putting the fence up, closing things off. So it's gonna be a little learning tool process, but we'll get through it. Like I said, and Trent and I already went over and we met with the principal and talked about a few things, kind of had the same conversation with her.
so we would think we might move in to this building in January of 26 or August of 26.
I will know that more.
I-
No, there's a
Want a
factor
date,
to that.
not-
Yeah, there's weather that plays into that.
Sure,
We've
sure.
had a great winter this time. I haven't lost very many days. But, you can anticipate losing the average yearly is about 60 days. So,
But is it fair to say January 26 is as early as it would open,
I-
based on 30 months?
Yeah, time we bid it out, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I personally would like to thank you for coming and you guys too for answering questions. And like I said, I'm not trying to ever sound like a Debbie Downer, because I'm actually very, very excited about this project. I think that our students are very deserving of everything that we can do. I have to ask questions about the money aspect, just because I have a lot of people asking me, when are you raising our taxes, since you're building this huge project, and they're not real happy, because they don't understand every aspect. And I just want to make sure that we're just being very frugal with all of our money. So,
Absolutely.
but now I will say this, I am in shock at the price of the football, what we're gonna do down there. That kind of surprised me, that difference, but it makes me feel good to know that number that you presented, this 42, has got that included, because I did not realize that the prior number did not have that included. So I just thought that maybe the project of the school itself had raised that much money in itself, and not the gymnasium. So that makes me feel better, knowing that additional money is for something that we didn't add on before, so that.
Well,
that number.
we want you to ask any question you have. There's no dumb question, and you need to be able to, we need to be able to explain to you, and you need to be able to explain to the public if they have questions. And hopefully I've given you enough information. If not, Dr. Bellinger always knows how to get a hold of me. If I need to come back, I will. You know, as I told you from the last meeting, these are estimates, budgets based on the current market. You know, I can only give you the best information, but based on our experience, based on recent projects that's been. As I told you, I'm high on this number. And we come to you and say, hey, you know what? Came in $3 million under budget. I may be $3 million low. So, I want to give you the best information I can to help you make a good decision. And, we're gonna stay positive, and when we come in here on bid day, hopefully the market's settled and we're able to come to you and say, hey, you know what? We came in $2 million under budget here.
Yeah.
And everybody be happy.
I do have a quick question. So no gymatorium or whatever, but will our current gym be retrofitted? Is it gonna be updated? And that's in the budget?
It is a light,
Okay.
so it won't be the huge overhaul, but light kind of strategic boosts.
Okay. Is it what it was gonna be before? I mean, is it the same thing we had already
Yes,
planned?
what you'd already
Okay.
So the cheerleader on the wall that didn't get finished,
Yeah, that's gone.
we'll take care of her. But-
Better
Well,
light,
paint her
well, lighting's
leg, are
better
you?
now.
We're gonna get that other leg on it. But it won't be
After all these
a
years.
huge over, which it doesn't really need it. It
No,
just
it's
needs a
like a
strategic.
Partial to those girls.
Okay, yeah, that was just my other question. Thank you.
And Angie, we still do have plans to phase that
Yeah.
gymatorium in.
Yes.
It
It's just
just
gonna
may
be, transparency is important, and I think to the community, transparency is gonna be super important, so if we're like, yeah, just go to the gym, nothing else, we need to be able to tell them truthfully, but, make it sound good, cause it's gonna be good.
Sure.
That's just what I wanted to know. We'll have lots of questions, we all know that, through the community. I'm excited about the football field, though, I don't even know that you should just call it the football field, the
We had
complex, whatever we wanna call it, cause it's more than just a football field.
We had
We've
that
needed
same
that.
conversation this morning of, that's encompasses so much more.
It does, it really does. It'll always be the football field, but it's gonna be used for so much more, I hope.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and answering our questions and listening to me gripe, cause I'm worried about the money and so I appreciate you very much though. And this is gonna be so wonderful for our students. I'm so excited that, I'm excited that I get to serve on a term that's gonna get to see this get done. So,
And just so you know, Fayette County is building a new middle school, $82 million for 1,200 kids, so we're right about there. Cause so just FYI, that makes you feel any better.
but thank you so much. Anyone? No?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, next I would like to, yes.
So if we just tell you we can pay for it, is that okay? We don't have to present?
Listen, if you say that you've got the money, then we're good. We'll add something else to the project.
How much commission are you willing to forego to help us make this happen?
Are you gonna name it after me too?
If you'll give us commission, we'll name the restroom or something out
There we
there.
go.
Water fountain.
Something, right?
Or Anthony Strong dumpster.
There we go. Yeah, I like this board, y'all got him on here. Just kidding. Excuse me. Where's his, you still got it? You showed how neat it was, to work with it, but it's not here.
Do y'all want a hard copy?
We're gonna let, he's gonna pass out, copies and while
I
he's
didn't
doing
know if it
that.
was on here, and
Thank you.
sometimes the numbers are hard to read.
Awesome.
Do we need to do the operations actions first?
This is
Well, he's
still
still
under
part of it.
BG one
Okay, this is still
discussion.
BG.
Yeah, same thing.
Sorry.
But as always, it's good to be here, and since we have one more day in January, and it's Board Appreciation Month, I will thank you for your service as board members and tell you how much we appreciate working with you, being there. And just, to add, and I think all of you know my background as a former superintendent and working with architects across the state and working with the different construction companies and whatever. The questions that you were asking were spot on, and we're hearing this at every board meeting. that we're at, just because of the costs and the things that had happened during COVID and supply chain issues and increased costs. I mean, I know everybody sees it at home, but, we're even seeing it more so with schools right now. And it makes it, really kind of difficult to have started this project this long ago and to the discussion aspect and to see those increases and go. But it looks like we're moving forward and being able to do that. So what you've got in the handout, if you turn to the second page, your bonding potentials summary. We're estimating that bonding potential range to be between 32.4 and 47.7 million. Your estimated project, as we've heard, is 43.5. So with those considerations, a couple things, just like the market for construction costs have changed, but a lot of things that have changed in the financial market that we're working now with school districts we're going to talk about. So when you look at that presentation to get to that dollar amount, we're including the $4 million FSCC grant that you received for the school. You've got $938,000 that's been escrowed, that is required locally. You've got $1.5 million in restricted fund cash to put in there as well to get you to that number that you need to do. The one thing, and we talked about this when you passed the first nickel and when you passed the second nickel, potentially there's additional that equalization piece. And we don't know right now till legislature decides if you will get that second nickel equalized. We know the first one is, but we don't know for sure. Now, there's nothing to indicate to us that they will change from what they've done, but, till the ink's on the paper, we just want to make sure that we're very clear in understanding that. We tried to do that when we talked to you about passing those nickels and do that. The next item, the projected ADA decline of 125 students. And this is something that has been kind of near and dear to my heart as former superintendent, going into a district one time, inheriting a situation where we were losing students. And with this whole issue with COVID, and you've been working off of your funding off 2018 ADA numbers, we've worked very hard with Superintendent DPP to make sure we're in the numbers. So we're looking at an actual ADA number to calculate this bonding of 125 less students, because we feel like we have to be conservative, because we don't want to use an inflated number and you not have the ability to do that. So that's something that we have been working with all of our clients and on being able to do that, make sure that's out there. We've also factored in working with Superintendent Finance Officer, the fact to maintain and protect your capital outlay funds to make sure that you have those for things that will happen in the district. Because, the state will allow you to do 80% and sometimes 100%. But in this scenario, we're not using any of that money to make sure the district has it for operational, for maintenance things, whether it's buy buses or pay insurance or do whatever. So, in saying that we can do this project, we're giving you very conservative recommendation on, being able to do that. And then the other thing is right now interest rates, terms, and future bonding. As you know, interest rates have been up historically high from the last 2 years. We have seen a bit of a decline. So that could be a good thing. And hopefully that will, just like hopefully they'll come under bid, hopefully our interest rates will be down lower than what we're looking at in the past. So if you go to the next slide, just to show you, this is a graphical picture of your current debt. And as you see there, all that space between the bar graphs and the top line graph at the top shows where we have that ability for you to take the money that you have to spend to increase your bonding. So that's where those numbers are going to come from. So going to the next page, doing the comparison, I'm going to keep to come up, and we will talk about the comparison numbers and looking at 25-year financing and 30 years.
Just to kind of stay on this visual, obviously the difference between the top line and the bottom line, that space in between is how money comes to pay for the bond, right? So that's how your bonding potential is derived. Basically, based upon your revenues coming into your building fund versus what your current debt is. And so, the little bit of the trick to get into this is, the timing of the equalization and how that plays out. But we did break down a 25-year option and a 30-year option, and we just went through all the BG1 numbers, so you've got all the detail on the uses, but we're kind of showing you the sources of funding there as well, which include district bonds and the SFCC bonds that are supported by your 2014, 16, and 18 and 20 offers. So this is assuming the utilization of your current SFCC offers, as well as the cash on hand. Basically, all that combined is how you derive those sources of money to pay for everything. Any questions related to anything on that?
Will you clarify the cash on hand? Just clarify that for me, just what that really entails.
Yeah, so it's the grant that you received, especially that's $4 million.
Thank you.
The 1.5 is basically surplus restricted funds from the nickel being collected.
Thank you.
And then historically, there was about just under $1 million from prior years that's been quote unquote escrowed for the SFCC offers.
So it's still restricted funds, like I said,
Correct.
not just in air like we were talking about. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no restricted.
Yeah, these are all building fund related.
No general.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I just
Yeah,
wanted to
no
clarify.
general.
Miss Jenny, what projects are we paying on right now?
Of course, the energy project that we most recently have done, the high school roof, a little bit, Mount Vernon, boiler roof project, and Broadhead, I believe, we have just a little bit, I believe that's the.
Is that the HVAC?
Yes.
Do that?
Skip my list.
Yeah.
She just covered it all.
So with this, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask this, if we had something come up catastrophic, what bonding potential will we have left?
We've talked about that in great detail, and Mr. Keith has those numbers for you.
It's probably easier to explain with this next page with all the stuff on here. That's why I handed it out. I know it's difficult. But, I'm trying to be transparent with how we're kind of approaching the financing as well. And as Anthony said, we're trying to take a very conservative take on this, but obviously, we're, while your construction costs still got to be bid out, so do the bonds, and the bond financing side of it works in a similar fashion. So, but kind of working left to right on this page, the left column B, those are your current restricted funds. So that's your capital outlay and your building fund nickels, all the local nickels and the ones that are currently being equalized. The two are included in that number. So that's 100%. And you can see it bumps up from 24 to 25 because of the way the second nickel was equalized at 25%. So that's the difference there. And then you can see towards the bottom and the outward years here, it reduces when that nickel no longer gets equalized, right? So that's column B. Column C, obviously the ADA affects your equalization piece. And so this is where Anthony was alluding to, where we've tried to back that off to be conservative. Obviously, it may or may not materialize that way, but this is the projection, taking current seat numbers and backing off 125 students, what that would do to your equalization. And so obviously, when the equalization rolls off on the one nickel, the impact to you changes, right? So that's why the numbers vary over time, where in the earlier years it's a higher number than the outward years because it's only one nickel that we're looking at there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the ADA, you and I had a discussion. You were hoping that they would let us, instead of ADA, go to, yes, explain what.
A funding source changes, then that could benefit us greatly. If the equalization comes to play, then that benefits us greatly. If we get the additional $8 million that we're lobbying for, that benefits us greatly. So we have lots of variables that could really change this whole dynamic, but we're trying to move forward just being very conservative, as if none of those are going to come to play. play.
Okay, explain the difference it would make ADA versus ADM.
Yes, so so in our SEEK formula, if they made the transition to ADM, next year we would see an increase in our SEEK of $800,000.
An increase.
An increase.
Okay,
If
and the
that's
legislation is making a vote to decide it, is that how it's?
They would have to decide to make that change, yes. Now, there's options because some districts, it would benefit them not to switch to ADM, so there's some discussion of there possibly allowing districts to choose. Would you stick with your 18-19 numbers? Would you move forward with ADM to give some flexibility, because some districts are growth districts, some districts are losing students, to be a more fair playing field. But if that's gonna be determined in this short session, we don't know that yet. That might happen in the 24 session, or it could happen in this session.
And Angie, if they switch to ADM and we got an additional $800,000 in revenue, that number would be completely obsolete.
Yeah.
That is absolutely lowballing that. So that would flip and benefit us tremendously. Am I right, Keith, on bond potential there over time? Of course, we don't know that's gonna happen, but
Ultimately, you got revenues and expenses and you got project costs, right? So we're trying to be conservative on the revenue and expense piece. But to the question about your future bonding potential, all these things can impact it dramatically. And so that's why when you look at the first page, we give you a bonding potential range, because it really can vary pretty dramatically. But yeah, that's correct. I mean, and again, we try to look at this and say, okay, we know a lot of districts are experiencing ADA issues. What's the situation here? Okay, we don't want to get in a situation where we bond everything out and then all of a sudden, you're short money. And so this was our best attempt in working with everyone to try to put a number to it. Back that. And then column E is your existing debt service. This is existing debt service that's paid from restricted funds. So the energy project, the savings from that is realized in the general, so that debt's not included in here. And so you get ultimately to column F, which is how much money do you have available to pay for all this. And then so you can see we kind of run it under a 25-year scenario, assuming equalization on the nickel, and then on a 30-year scenario with no equalization. And so column G is the estimated debt service for 25 years, paying for everything that was discussed on the BG1. And then you can see we've added back the estimated equalization. The timing of that impacts your bonding from a standpoint of now, right? So in other words, if for some reason we were able to get that equalized immediately, right, then all that cash is now, we can know for certain that it's coming, or at least for 2 years, and succinctly bond off of that and give you additional cash, because your constraint really on your bonding under that scenario is primarily in the earlier years when the equalization isn't as high. If that makes sense. So, but you can see under column I there, that's the remaining funds after you pay your debt off. You can see the annualized numbers that increase beginning in 2027. So to your point, if this were all play out exactly as I've modeled it here on paper, that's your future ability to bond. And so you wouldn't really have any additional bonding potential until fiscal year 26 under this scenario. But it would be roughly between 8.5 to 10.5 million on a 20 to 25 year basis at that point in time, if that makes sense. So you would have some, with the equalization, you would have some additional bonding potential down the road. Yeah, and there's some ability, depending on timing and all this, because KDE looks at your bonding differently than the way you do in terms of how we're being conservative here. But there is some flexibility to structure that 25-year scenario to tweak, the cash flows. In other words, you said, Keith, we have no need for bonding for 10 years, right? Well, we can amortize the debt faster. You would have less annual cash flow, but you'd have bigger bonding down the road. So those are some of the discussions that we have in trying to plan. But this, for this stage of where we are, this is kind of gives you a pretty good ballpark of what we're seeing from that standpoint. And then conversely, if you look at the 30 years without the equalization, right, the project still fits under that parameter based on current estimates, but obviously you don't have a whole lot of bonding, future bonding potential absent any additional SFCC offers that you might receive. And so those are the kind of the two scenarios to give you an overview of where we're at today.
Keith, I want to chime in just a moment to
Sure.
say these numbers are in spite of our ESSER funding that we still have we will still have our ESSER funding available, so we're not using any ESSER dollars in this project. Does not impact our contingency whatsoever, and then also does not impact usage of the funds that we have. So all of that remains solid.
So for a couple of years, if something was to happen, we still have the ESSER to go back to.
We still have all of that.
It's a rainy day fund.
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear that we were not using any ESSER funding in this project.
So about our equalization, when will we know? Like, what is that? We don't know. Magic question?
April the 15th to 24th.
Maybe we're
Hopefully before that.
we're working on seeking a bill that would allow us the nickel to be equalized beginning in 2024, but go in this session, having that bill put forward.
And this is what you've been working for since last year, correct?
The equalization piece, but also we're also lobbying for an additional $8 million in addition to our $4 million that we
Which you
received.
started on last year also, correct? Okay.
And that would
There
change.
were a few additional districts like yourself that did additional nickels this fall. And all of those districts have been working together, Ms. Ballinger, to try to get that equalization in this session so that that can happen.
So this is kind of crazy, I guess, but do they just pick a certain number that can receive that, or can, if they decide for one, all get it, or how does that?
It's kind of like what we said in the beginning, historically, they've never not funded the districts that have done the recallable nickels and equalized them. But there's nothing that, so it hadn't been, we'll pick Rockcastle and Southgate and not do Pendleton County. If you did it, everybody's gotten it. So.
They grab you in a window of time based on, so like last time when you got equalized, there was a handful of other districts that all had levied it since the last time, so they got all of them. But based on historical, they normally do it in a budget session, so that's the change here. But we've delayed the collection of it out to 25 in our model is kind of how we've tried to deal with it. But it's such a big number to you all specifically, and then it's a key piece to the whole equation here. And obviously the $8 million will change the dynamics dramatically on the debt service side. Yeah.
So we presented the very worst case scenario with the hopes that one of those three or all of those three funding sources will come to pass. Potentially changes in ADA, potential equalization, and then potential additional funding from the legislature. So if any one of those happen, of course that helps us, but there's the potential that all three could come into play.
And so will this affect our new district facilities plan? Like, will this affect it? I mean, how you all perceive it?
Yeah, it'll definitely affect it.
I mean, what you deem needed, not needed. For the good or bad, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how KDE will advise us to move ahead. I assume that the entire middle school will be, when we revise the plan, that the cost will be on that. So that bottom line will move from 40 to 80.
So,
Once it's built, we take it back off in the
Yeah.
next facility plan.
But our bonding potential, will that affect your facilities plan?
I asked Keith about that this morning, and it's minor.
Okay.
It will, but it's not a lot, it's not that much.
Yeah,
Okay.
We figured, what, maybe $400,000,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it's that much.
I'm making my brain work tonight.
And also, just as a reminder, that column D on page 5, again, shows you back to what, what money you're gonna have available. You've got 250,000 there that we pulled out at y'all's request, or the leadership's request, that allows for problems, issues, or whatever that were not included in that bonding. So that's for rainy day issues or things that may happen. And then the other thing, back to the ADA, ADM, that column C piece, that changes. There's $127,000 a year pulled out for that as well. That could go back into.
Okay,
And,
that's what I want to know. I got you.
So a dollar of bonding costs about how much a year? You said a number a while ago, but I didn't.
Are you trying to back into how much bonding you can get based on cash flow?
So if we had $200,000 to pay bonds a year, that we can borrow how much with that?
It depends on term rate and all that, right? So it's back of the napkin kind of stuff, but I usually just divide it in half. But the issue that you all have, which makes that a very difficult math equation for me to do, is the way your cash flows, right? You got to think of what you have and where the constraints are. And so your constraints are in the earlier years. So adding cash flow in the back doesn't help you because I can't borrow any more money.
Right.
So, but if you just looked at like 200,000, for 20 years, and that's, what's 2 million, 4 million divided by half is give you a pretty close guesstimate of what that would generally do. I mean, rates, as Anthony has said, it's come down here actually fairly substantially here in the last 2 to 3 months. And we try to factor a conservative rate assumption in here, but I think we're somewhere around 4.5% on the 25-year financing. But again, it's probably 25 basis points or so cushion right now, but it's still better than we were looking at this 2 months ago.
And KDE would allow us to use up to 80% of our capital outlay funds, but we're choosing to be more conservative and not to do that.
I think it says something that we can do that and have this. Do you know what I mean? Like, it looks pretty, being very conservative, I think.
We've tried to be very conservative on every front, knowing that there's gonna be some potential relief.
Yeah.
We don't actually have to make any decisions tonight or vote on anything, and for this evening, this is just information. And then we will wait to see, this legislative session ends at the end of March. So we'll just wait to see how it unfolds over the next 2 months and come back with some different numbers based on how that unfolds.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
We haven't heard anything from our architects. Have you tweaked anything to show us anything good tonight?
we've just been laying around the house.
I'm telling you, man, I'm disappointed. When we see pictures, see, it makes me happy.
Yeah, I hear you. Progress is very healthy, so like we did the team meeting, last week, and it's hard to kind of do those meetings, because it's like, well, we're doing flashing and brick weeks. It's not a lot to talk about. But progress is very good. Specs we're approaching 90%, so we're wrapping those this week, and that's the big chunk of book you get. 1,000 or 1,200 pages, custom written text just for you. So we're delivering that later this week, and then we've got, we'll be back at your board meeting this month to seek your approval on the construction documents. And then behind the scenes, they will be substantially complete when we show them to you, but then we're gonna spend another 2 weeks just coordinating, because everyone will send us the plans at the same time. So everyone that's worked on this project, on whenever your board meeting is, the night before, they're gonna send us all those plans, and we're gonna glue them together and present them to you. But then we're gonna spend a couple more weeks just checking and making sure that everything that everybody worked on is cohesive. So we're gonna do that, and then the plan is March 1, hand them here to Mr. Travis for his use. So that's where we're at now. We would love to show you new, shiny, fun things, but probably what we would like to do is just survive the deadline. And then while we're out the bid and that kind of process is rolling, then we'll go back and catch up the video, catch up the renderings, catch up all that stuff to where the documents are. So what tends to happen is you have like your presentation materials, and then you have your actual like construction documentation, and they don't kind of go through the process together. They kind of like take turns. So right now, all the presentation stuff is kind of in the gutter, and the technical bidding stuff is where our focus is. So we're gonna survive that, and then we'll circle back and catch all the presentation back up, actually show you what's in the documents.
Thank you.
Thank you. But we're very optimistic. It's good, we're excited.
Takes a village.
I really appreciate everyone for coming tonight and just answering our questions, and I'm sure this is live, so maybe the public has got to see some of this and hear it from others besides us. So, with that being said, item 4 on our agenda is operations and actions. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, we need to go through them and approve these. Right? Usually it's a discussion piece instead of, okay. So item A, review and approve the 23-24 draft budget. Ms. Jenny.
We are going to cruise through our draft budget, and it's really exciting to hear all the conversations that are taking place this evening, because everything that we've talked about this evening with the building project has been part of the strategic plan. So just want to take us back to our pillars of our strategic plan, and the fact that everything we do in our school district is built under these targeted areas. And you know, student achievement, student readiness, student support, safety and well-being, fiscal systems, operation systems, community partnerships, and professional learning and staffing. Just reminding us, as we've been working through, you know, the middle school project and the excitement that comes from that. But our mission for Rockcastle County Schools, this is a perfect example of the unifying force that that we have in our community to educate, encourage, and empower the whole child to become a lifelong learner and leader in a global society. The work that we've talked about tonight is very important work, and so many individuals have, from so many different areas, have just taken such a significant part in that work, and it's exciting to be a Rocket. Our financial goals, we continue to focus on efficiency, partnerships, growth, and sustainability. Something that we've not talked about is just the financial strategy for our school district. You know, we are a small rural community, and we take pride in supporting our students, and we can do that through a sound district financial system. And the areas that we focus on in our financial strategy is equity for our students, equity for our taxpayers. I think Rockcastle County can be really proud of the work that we've done with equalizing our nickel. We really worked to partner with our community, and the district really took, you know, a big stand, and we kind of lessened the burden on the taxpayer and really took that on as a school district. And it's taken you know, much strategy to make that happen. And Dr. Ballinger has worked diligently to seek additional funding for this project, and it's just exciting to see it all coming together. Efficiency. Everything that we do, we're analyzing, we're focusing on the needs of our students and our staff and accountability. We use generally accepted budgeting, accounting, auditing principles to continue to have an improvement model for our finances. Stability. As you know, we've talked about cash flow and building stability in our school district. And that's been a priority of mine, continues to be work that we work on daily. Just that we maintain a stable financial system. And cash flow is one of the things that we've talked about, and I think we've made great strides in maintaining a positive cash flow, and that's reflected on our balance statements. So I know we can all be very proud of the work that we have done, and we could not accomplish it if we were not all working on this together. Just analyzing our budget revenues, our expenditures, and our contingency, we're at our revenue and expenditures at about 85.7% of our budget, with leaving a contingency of 14.3%. And we've been working to build that contingency further, and we're making great strides in that area. Our general fund, so our Fund 1 budget is coming in at about $30.6 million. As I mentioned, cash flow management, we look at our fund categories. Capital outlay we've talked about this evening as part of this project. We have worked to protect those capital outlay funds so that we, Ms. Anna, you mentioned, what if there's, what if we have, what's our bonding potential? What's our future bonding potential? We do not know what emergencies might come up in Rockcastle County Schools. We could have a system failure that needed additional funds. We feel like that protecting these capital outlay funds will enable us to have additional bonding potential in these years where, it's a little bit lower, and that gives us some security. Our construction funds, we've talked about funds 360. We're excited to focus on our middle school and the needs of our students attending the middle school in the future. Our building has, Mr. Trent has demonstrated to us the needs of that building, and it's exciting to see the possibilities for the future. Yes, ma'am.
When we've paid for buses in the past, which fund did that come from? Was that capital outlay?
Okay. Over the past several years, we have utilized capital outlay funds to buy buses, and we've been able to do about a $49,000 transfer to general fund for things like insurance, property insurance, and that type of thing. And there's other ways that we can, utilize capital outlay funds based on our need. Our building fund, Fund 320, our FSBK building fund, $895,440 state, and our general fund property tax revenue totals a little over $2.7 million. As you know, we take a transfer as soon as in the fall, when we start getting our property taxes in. One of the first things that we do is we take a transfer from general fund to our building fund. So for next year, we're projecting that transfer of tax dollars of $1,154,663. That leaves a balance of a little over $1.6 million in tax revenues in general fund. So those dollars are very important to the project that we're working on. Debt service funds. Our revenues are transferred from Fund 400 for the payment of our scheduled bond principal and our interest payments. And we estimate our debt payments to be at $618,613 in fiscal year 24. Just, I had taken this slide out, and it looks like I pulled it back in. As we were talking about ADA and ADM, didn't know if we wanted to go here tonight, but just to kind of give you an idea of what those numbers would look like for our school district. We have been transitioning on this pause that the state has had us on due to COVID, from 18-19, we are now going into 23-24, and we've been using 18-19 numbers. So during this time, you know, the legislature provided additional funds per student. In 18-19, we were at $4,000 per student. This fiscal year, we're at $4,100 per student. Next fiscal year, it will go to $4,200 per student. I think the intent of our legislative body was to increase SEEK funding for school districts. But because of this COVID pause, you know, we're just now going to catch up to ADA numbers of what they look like today. And because of that, it's going to potentially have a negative effect on many school districts. Our ADA, we would, as compared to 18-19, we would be down about $170,000. If we went to ADM, we would gain over $874,000. And you know, that's something that we would all like to see happen, but maintaining that $4,200 per student and ADM, or some fashion of, you know, maybe we advocate that we stay on 18-19. I just don't think that that we would have inched toward this number, this transition, over multiple years. But now we're going from 18-19 to 23-24. So it's a big jump. You know, we would not have felt that difference if we had just been kind of inching, gradually moving. So I pulled this slide back in just so that we could take a look. You know, ADM, you know, would definitely have a positive impact for our school district.
Our contingency in the past, what has that been?
Probably about 7%.
So in this draft budget, it's 14.7?
14.3%.
14.3%, okay.
And that's some of the work that we talked about that we wanted to do as we went into this fiscal year. We're going to be restricting some additional contingency in our budget so that, you know, we kind of, I know you often reference it as a rainy day fund, but building some additional contingency dollars there for the future.
The state requires what percentage?
2%.
I knew we always were considerably above that, but I couldn't recollect that number or anything.
And then food service also has about $200,000 in contingency that's not part of that 14.3. They're required to have a contingency as well.
Ms. Jenny, I think it's worth saying out loud for anybody that's watching at home, student attendance on either model, student attendance matters.
Oh, yes.
And Mr. Repper to get those numbers up. But I mean, seriously, in either case, that's a huge deal to well, I guess on the ADM it's not, but on the ADA it certainly is, and whether that's a concern. And not just, it is student learning, but it's also attendance matters.
And we are better over the state. It's a 1 to 3% drop in ADA, just from what I've gathered from other DPPs. We're a little bit better, I think, than most, but we're seeing a decline compared to the numbers we had before. Obviously, everybody is generally.
What's our overall average right now?
It's like 91.7 or something like that. It was like 93.4 or something before, prior to COVID. So.
And inflation, you know, that's another part of our story in preparing for our budget, you know, in the next year. And you know, having the additional dollars come in with ADM would help offset that and provide some stability for our school district. But there are, as Mr. Riffert mentioned, there are other districts that are, you know, are going to have additional struggles, and ADM would definitely have a positive impact for them as well. And many of those in Eastern Kentucky that were impacted by flooding. On the next slide, just a touch on our tax revenue analysis. So if you look below the highlighted line, and Mr. Keith Brock, I took some of your information that you've prepared for us before, but I gave you credit for it, so I hope that's okay.
I didn't see the source.
So, and I did that before you were even going to be here. But our tax revenue, you know, one of the positive things is in fiscal year 24, if you'll go over and look, under general fund increase, general fund of tax revenue of 89,800, and a portion of that going to building fund as designated. Moving in the right direction there. This is just a quick breakdown of contingency in all of the areas that you know, Rockcastle County Schools has always prided itself on focusing on student instruction and having staff in the classrooms to support our students has been a priority. We do a great job with our plant operations and maintenance and our transportation system and our food service program. Student support and students are the focus of our district, and we can all be very proud of that. Fund 2, we'll talk a little bit more about Fund 2 and all of our projects and our mini grants that we have as part of our tentative budget. We'll talk about that more in May as we begin to receive allocations from the state. Just a breakdown of kind of where we're going with our tentative budget. As you recall, we look at budgets 3 times per year. This is kind of like first time out the gate with our draft budget, just a skeleton of what we'll be doing, working with our district staff, with the schools, to our principals, to build our tentative budget. We'll be looking at staffing allocations, SBDM allocations, salary schedule. Usually we do not receive a seat forecast from KDE until late April, early May. We'll present that to you and submit to KDE at the end of May. Just a few highlights. Many folks have input into our budget in a variety of ways. We have weekly district meetings, and oftentimes we're talking about the needs in our schools that our directors are bringing to the table, and that's a very important conversation that we have on an ongoing basis, and just reviewing our grants and our staffing, and we'll use all of that information for our tentative budget. But right now, as it stands, we're at a $30.6 million in general fund budget. This is about 78% is in salary and fringe for fiscal year 24. We've been working diligently to bring that number down, and we have succeeded Dr. Ballinger in dropping that below 80%, and that was our goal. Do you have any questions about the budget? You have a line item budget in that you had the opportunity to review. We put that in your drive at the last hour at our last board meeting. Munis had been down and kind of threw a little wrinkle in our day, and we wanted you to have more time to review the draft budget line items and ask any questions that you may have.
Are we seeing a significant drop in the franchise tax due to people no longer having cable and those sorts of things and home phones, or has that not been a significant?
No.
Okay.
Not. Last year there was a little bit of a drop, and that's back up this year, and I think it was probably just a little bit of a delay in revenues coming in.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. All in favor? Thank you, Miss Jenny, for all your hard work. I appreciate you.
Team effort.
I did have, you said that, I was gonna ask this, our, salary or staff we're below 80%, right? Is that the first time in, for as long as you probably can remember?
It's the first time since I've been working in finance that we've, and we've just been working really hard to make sure our schools have the staff that they need. We've received several new grants, that has made a difference in, you know, the staffing. I think that we can just be really proud of the services that we provide to our students. And, you know, though our students are our clients, they're our, you know, it's just really wonderful to have, you know, the support that the board provides to focus on students. And I think we're doing that and doing it really well.
Does that number include the positions that we need to fill?
Yes. That, currently, that number would be based on our prior staffing allocation, keeping it the same. And that 78% number, that percentage also includes all fringe that we pay for staff.
Thanks, Ms. Jenny. Item 4B, review and approve the agreement with NutriSlice Solutions, January 23 through January 24. Ms. Jennifer?
Yes, I think I've talked to you all about this at the last board meeting, moving to a different platform to communicate our menus to our community that includes nutritional information, including allergens, calories, saturated fat, all of that. And NutriSlice was the company that I've selected. I've reviewed 3 different companies, and this one was more user-friendly, at least for me, so I feel like it will be for our parents and community as well. And so that price, that cost, is that $44.60 is the initial, this first year to get that set up and going, and it's reduced by $2,000 for every year thereafter. So it's a subscription that we keep paying each year. However, we maintain that information, and they're wonderful to work with. Good support, good training. So we should have that up and going. I'm hoping March if we can do it. If we could do it, we'll approve that.
And then parents can access that by just getting on the
and
website.
you can even download it as an app, whether you have an iPhone or one of those other phones that I don't have. But yeah, it comes in an app and it's very user friendly, easy to navigate. So I'm excited about it.
Sure, yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Item 4C, approve the TC4 emergency certificates for substitute teaching.
Yes, these are just 3 that we have had that have applied to be substitutes in the district since our last board meeting. I just wanted to go ahead and approve this instead of waiting so we could go ahead and get these people working.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Item 4D, approve the mass evacuation agreement with Rockcastle Detention Center.
Okay, so from what I have gathered, we have had this in effect since I think there was an emergency at the jail several years ago where there was a fire and we used buses to help transport inmates. So Jailer Nathan Carter and Judge Holbrook have asked for us to renew this with the county.
Just a quick question, is this just buses only, they provide the person driving it, or is this us driving it?
We would drive, but we've had the discussion, and if in that event, it would only be like Mr. Ken Hopkins and our mechanics. We would not be asking bus drivers to take that on.
That was the only question I had concerning that.
If something happened in the case of an accident, would our insurance be responsible?
If we have this MOU, then we would be covered.
Okay.
Should,
I think this is pretty common in a
Just
lot of
kind of
rural areas.
partnership
Yeah.
with our community.
should the MOU cover damage to buses or reimbursement of costs? I mean, I don't know if it should or shouldn't, but
Well,
It
probably
basically is
should,
up to
but-
you all, if you all would like to include that, we can modify and bring it back
I
and.
mean, I support the concept, I just wonder if those things would,
Mhm.
I don't know.
I think that if it came down to that, it would just be a matter of trying to negotiate and have the,
But if that was
Fiscal
included
court.
on this, we would have
Mhm.
a better place to start.
And we could ask the fiscal court to name Rockcastle County Schools, on their policy, and that would cover us.
So we can take both of those items back and bring this back at our next board meeting.
I think it's good.
that's good. We'll pass on this tonight. Approve the student athletic and accident insurance.
The insurance, policy is in your, packet. It's the same coverage and the same rate as the current fiscal year. So we're recommending, to go with the lowest rate from Roberts Insurance. That's with Hartford K&K at the same rate, same coverage, level, and that covers all students in Rockcastle County Schools, not just athletics.
So,
Move to approve.
with that being
Hold up,
said,
Matt.
what does that cover? And how like, is there a set dollar amount that it will only pay for, and then the parent is due after that?
Yes. There's a schedule in here. Student accident insurance is meant to be a supplemental insurance to the primary insurance, that a family or a student may have. So it's designed to cover like co-pays. You know, oftentimes one of the questions that we have is, imaging, you know, it covers a certain amount, or physical therapy, it covers a certain number of physical therapy visits. You know, so those are some of the questions that we get.
Does it cover anything for dental or vision?
Yes.
It's maximum 500.
Yes.
So
For
our
two.
parents, is there something that they can purchase above and beyond what we give them?
Yes. As part of our policy, we offer a voluntary, insurance policy that, and we post that on our website. There's a couple of different, coverage levels. There's some specific to athletics, and there's some, you know, and even an additional, 24-hour coverage that offers some additional coverage for parents, and we're not involved in that. We provide the information. They can contact the insurance company as a student at Rockcastle County Schools and sign up.
So the only way that they know is if they go on our page and they review and they find that to purchase it.
Coaches share that information with, when they have meetings with their parents. But we can be certain that, we provide some additional suggestions that information gets out in coaches' meetings with
I think
parents.
that would be a good idea.
And, you know, we can also do some sharing of that from our
That'd be great.
website, just to make it more common.
Cause I figured there
Mhm.
was more to it than
Mhm.
maybe in layers, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Sure.
Okay.
This is my ignorance, but is athletic and accident, is it completely different policies?
It's the
all the
same.
same. Okay.
It's the same, so that, every student in Rockcastle County Schools, has some insurance coverage under this policy. And again, it's designed to be a supplemental coverage. You know, it's not something that's required that we offer.
So there's nothing different under sports, under
No.
athletics, okay.
But there is additional
But there's-
voluntary
That-
insurance.
That they can pick up,
That they
that
can
would
pick
pay
up.
above and beyond
Mhm.
this.
And it's very,
if needed.
very reasonable for the coverage that's
We had a lot of
offered.
claims this year?
Good. You know, you have the occasional broken arm on the playground, or, you know, some, just routine.
Did they ever deny a claim?
If it was beyond the time frame when
Okay,
a parent can submit invoices, then that, you know, that would be,
Or above the
Possible.
amount of.
yes, or if it goes above the amount. You know, but it does offer some additional support to, families.
Thank you, Miss Jenny, sorry, I picked your brain there.
Need a motion to approve the student athletic and accident insurance.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor? Okay, now we have to recess from our regular board meeting. I need a motion to recess for that.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Now we need. Got what we're calling it here, financial, finance corporation. So,
Move to open the meeting.
all right,
Second.
all in
Sorry,
favor?
Hannah.
You're good.
And it's now all you, sir.
Doesn't matter, right, we're good.
This is just the next phase to keep the process moving on the financing. So if you may remember this from the energy project, the bonds are actually issued through the finance corporation. So what's before you is the resolution authorizing the bonds to kind of move forward. Doesn't,
Have we confirmed the officers yet?
oh, I'm sorry, did I jump ahead on the agenda?
So on here, the officers are Miss Angie Mink as president, myself as serving as secretary, and Miss Jenny Sweet as treasurer, and then the members are the rest of the board meeting.
I make a motion to that effect to confirm them, just to be
Move
clear.
to confirm the officers.
Need a second? Second. All in favor? Yep.
So speaking to the right group, so we got that. So, yeah. Again, it's just, this is the authorization of the bonds, and allows us to kind of move forward with the next step in our process and bond oversight and some of the things we need to go through. Again, it doesn't obligate you to issue the bonds, this just allows us to continue to move forward. There's a lot of legal stuff in there, but I'd be happy to try to take a stab
So
at any
we do not
questions.
need to read this or anything to make it,
The
Just
bold,
this excerpt
yeah.
needs to be read into the, needs to be written into the minutes.
I move to approve the resolution as written.
I second.
all in favor? Need a motion to adjourn? For the financial? Okay, all in favor? Now we need a motion to come out of recess to go back so we can talk again.
I'll make a motion.
Second,
Yes.
all right.
Exercise.
Now we'd like to say thank you for everybody once again for coming. And, I hope that everyone has safe travels home. Once again, gentlemen, I really do appreciate you coming and answering our questions and our concerns. So with that, a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.